Good morning on another special Friday of our live series, The Nuts and Bolt of Leadership. Today, a very cold day still in South Africa. As you can see, we all snuggle up and trying to stay warm. We'll be talking about a topic which I'm sure you can relate to, which is the hybrid working environment, and specifically looking at the pros and cons that this new working style has brought with it. So, if we go back in time 2 years ago, we were all in a little bit of a daze when hybrid came in and when the pandemic struck, and suddenly we were all forced to work from home or be remote workers, as one would call it. And I guess we were like deers looking at the bright lights, not quite sure what to do, how to do it, and figuring out as we were going along. And if you think, or maybe you don't know, but the hybrid working environment isn't something totally new to us, but it's never been used or applied to this absolute magnitude. So going back to the 1970s is when it's actually started because of the oil embargo, where it became too expensive to travel to work. So very few companies allowed and permitted the hybrid working place, but never thinking it would be a business model that would really become reality. And here it is, 2 years later, where we have dabbled in different ways of the hybrid working place. And it's now become a combination of starting to not only work remotely, but some days at the office, choosing sometimes which days we work at the office, and so it goes. So, a totally new dynamic has evolved, and I think we've all had our pros and cons with the hybrid working place. Some of us liked it, and we absolutely flourish in this environment, and others don't. They prefer it. I guess the new norm is here. We'll have to find a golden mean on what works the best for individuals, teams, leaders, and organizations. So far, most of the research or experience we've had is primarily for individuals and teams. And I think the next stage will be for organizations to try and establish how they can integrate a hybrid working model as a business model that's sustainable and can be maintained, and how to adjust policies, procedures to really create a positive working culture. So let's have a look at what we know so far about the hybrid working place. So, what are some of the pros that we've seen? So, what are some of the main benefits that we've encountered? And the one that has come up with a huge increase and shown is the productivity. So, it's proven that the hybrid working place has increased productivity substantially, and hence most organizations are in favor for it, but it obviously has a downside. For individuals, it has increased spending time with family because we can divide our days and our times on how we want to spend time with family. We most probably have a better work life balance where we can, let's be honest, sleep that little bit later and have a different lunch break where we can check in with our family, or we can collect the children from school, do homework, and then start working again later in the evening. So we've got a totally different mixture of how we choose to spend our days with our family. The third one is it has reduced commuting and traveling time. So having a big impact on uh, the environment and obviously on our financial pockets with the reduced commuting on the increased petrol price. So we are not traveling that much anymore, be that with train or buses or in cars. And we're saving money there over and above the time that we are saving on actually commuting. And as much as that might be a positive, I also equally see that as a bit of as a negative is the wrong word, but a challenge, because a lot of people used the commuting time as their way of disconnecting from their day and actually processing their day's activities, and then getting ready for when it was family time. Whereas in now, there is no commuting time. It's literally within 30 seconds or a minute where you're from one room to the other, and you don't always have time to process information all the day. I think the biggest advantage for individuals, which is number 4, is the enhancement of autonomy and flexibility. So we can choose when to work, how to work, and the time and the places. So we can decide to choose the locations and also the time. And that is one of the biggest motivating factors for individuals, for employees to actually have more autonomy. So that enhances employee engagement and job satisfaction. We've spoken about the commuting, which reduces the carbon footprint, and perhaps you might not be aware of it, but before COVID, the environmental concerns were our biggest topic, and now that's moved into second rank because the hybrid working place has actually toppled that. So the environment is still absolutely crucial, but how to work in the hybrid working place together has become taken the first stage. We've increased job satisfaction. People are way more satisfied in their work right now. And I mean, that's priceless, because if you're satisfied at work, you often go the extra mile, you give customer service, you volunteer and assist your team members, and you help out there. Number 7, it's become a stress reduction. We're not so stressed. And I'm sure it's a point where you might disagree with me that the hybrid working place has increased stress. And I'll come back to that a little bit later and perhaps explain why there's a paradox in the stress reduction or the stress increase. We have a better quality of life because we eat more nutritional, we're more conscious of what our bodies need, we physically exercise more, we have a little bit more time for us, which gives us that better quality of life. For organizations, the biggest advantage is that there's a larger talent of pool to select from, because with the hybrid working model, what's happened is organizations are no longer restricted to stick to their geographical regions, and they can literally expand and choose talents from anywhere in the world, which increases the talent pool. And I recently read a study where it was indicated that employees actually want to work for a company that has a hybrid model and would rather choose an organization that has a hybrid model, so that flexibility and that autonomy, even if it meant a cut in their salary or doesn't have that high salary. Yeah, and it also, number 10, reduced business maintenance. So it does help in maintaining the businesses for organizations, because now there's a cost saving for them. They don't have to keep such big premises or office spaces. They can downscale on servicing equipment or maintenance work. So for organizations, there's an absolute cost saving also in not having all their employees at the organization. And it can be as simple as looking at not having everything ready to stock up in the kitchen, the water coolers, the electricity, the gas, all of that, the cleaning, the plant care. So without even realizing it, but for organizations, that is a big cost saving. So those are just some of the benefits the hybrid working place have generated for us. However, as much as we see some of the benefits, we are also seeing some of the drawbacks. And I guess one can't really measure like for like here, that the one outweighs the other. The weightings aren't necessarily the same. So we can't really say that the 10 benefits equals the 10 drawbacks, that we had a zero sum game. Right now, if I look at the research that I've been reading on this topic quite a lot, is that the drawbacks are starting to override some of the benefits, which is the concerning challenge, and I suppose the biggest complexity for organizations to manage this right now. So let's look at some of the drawbacks. The first one is that employees are speaking about losing touch with colleagues, that they feel quite lonely and withdrawn, and they're not always sure where their colleagues are or what's happening. That buzz is just gone from bumping into each other casually in the passage, saying hi, or in an open plan office, cracking a joke, just sharing that camaraderie and having that human energy happening. So that's lost, which is a big concern, because as social human beings, a sense of belonging is key for us. Second one is the distance of organizational culture. And I guess this is the biggest challenge for organizations, is that how do they keep their employees engaged and motivated and connected to the likes of their vision, their mission, their goals, and their culture, because everybody is working in a very silo-based setup, which is the concern. So how do you bring in this human behavior and this joint connection and that vibe and that behavior without us all being together? And as I say, that will be for organizations the biggest challenge in developing and implementing right now, with about 75% of organizations very actively working on the instilling a positive culture in a hybrid working place. Number 3 is the unequal distribution of work. Again, another big concern, because work isn't necessarily equally distributed, specifically with employees who are working at the office or on site, and employees who are working remotely. Sometimes because you are on site, you automatically get work allocated to you, or projects allocated to you, or tasks, where if you remotely, the concept of out of sight, out of mind does apply. So the bigger concern there is that it's an unequal distribution of work, which dovetails into it's not fair and also hampers career growth and career development of the people who are not on site. The fourth one, I suppose, is something we can all commonly relate to, which is what the hybrid environment has done, and the advancement of technology and all the apps we have, is to continuously have this feeling of being on demand. So not having any more set working hours, it just phases into our evening times or our non-working times, always looking what's happening on our phones or our watches or emails, seeing them come through, and then having the urge or the guilt if we don't answer them or reply. So that means we're working a lot longer right now. We're working longer hours, and often even weekends, or even worst case scenario, throughout our holidays, just checking always if everything is okay. So that is a big concern, which will impact well-being and mental health, and I guess will be a big challenge for organizations on how to manage that from a cultural point of view. The fifth one is, as they call it, the Zoom fatigue, where it's that sense of having never-ending meetings. It's just the day runs from one meeting to the other. There might be a 5-minute break, in between for a body break, but there's no real breaks happening. And if you go back to uh, prior to COVID, that was really impossible because we either had to travel to get from one meeting to another, or there were breaks in between. But now we've just increased the number of meetings we are having in a day, which the challenge is that we don't actually get to our operational tasks in the day, and they filter then through into the evening. So somewhere managing meetings and setting boundaries there becomes crucial. The sixth one, which might be a surprise to you, but for organizations with a hybrid working model, is a huge increase in cyber attacks and managing their whole IT infrastructure, because employees are dialing in from all kinds of different locations, which weakens their whole IT infrastructure. And how can they manage that, and how can they make sure that all their employees equipment is, wherever they are, totally protected? Then 7 is the ergonomics and office setup. So can't speak for you, but the minute you had to do an office setup, it was literally starting to replicate what you already had in the office. Maybe perhaps buying bigger screens, and really upgrading your seating arrangement or your chairs and your desks and all of that. So that whole ergonomics and office setup became an unexpected expense. And for some organizations, they contributed financially to employees to spend money that they have a healthy and comfortable working environment. And for others, employees had to sort that out. So many employees are still either working on their at their dining room table, in the lounge, the bedroom, the kitchen counter, and some don't actually have the privilege of a set up, quiet office or study. The eighth one is the difficulty in building relationships. It is more strenuous to build relationships with peer colleagues and in a hybrid working environment, and especially for colleagues who are being employed during that time period. It's not that easy to be inducted and build relationships digitally with each other, and some employees have never physically met each other. And now with in-person working happening, that is a huge overwhelm factor for them, where it's like, I'm going to actually meet my colleagues for the first time. So the difficulty in building trust has a barrier of communication, trust, and collaboration. So it is really something that is quite serious to be taken care of and working in. The ninth one is the complexity to motivate employees. Some employees are naturally quite motivated to work on their own and can buckle down and just enjoy that space, where others really miss that buddy system, that social vibe, and lose motivation working on their own. And the 10th one is it decreases well-being. It's been proven that the hybrid working environment decreases well-being, which is an absolute paradox. Like I said earlier, where we're saying the hybrid working place increases work-life balance. But looking at some of these drawbacks, it does decrease well-being. And the biggest reason is that what the hybrid working place has done is that it has shifted the focus that employees stroke individuals have to learn self-leadership, to structure their days, to plan their days, to set boundaries, and learn all these skills that were previously taken for granted. So hence, there's a big shift for organizations on spending money in development and training, on helping individuals to become self mastery of their lives, and really building this structure back in their lives, because so far we've been going with the flow a little bit, not knowing where hybrid is going. And it's understandable because the pandemic has created the biggest single shift in the working environment in history. So as individuals, we are overwhelmed with the situation, although after 2 years we have sort of settled in and found our rhythm. But not everything is there where we need it to be. So I guess individuals have found their mojo, but do need more support. Now the onuses will be even more on leaders as well as organizations on how to manage these drawbacks so that they can support their teams and their employees to really flourish. So, dear listeners, that really was our nuts and bolts of leadership conversation today about the pros and cons of the hybrid working place. And the thought I want to leave you with is to perhaps contemplate on what is it that will make a difference for you to start introducing self leadership or self management, and what are some of the areas where you have to grow and develop in, be that in time management or setting boundaries, and finding ways that you are able to flourish more in the hybrid working place. And then I invite you to have that conversation with your leader, because they are also often grappling at finding solutions, because this is a very complex situation we are finding, or in we are in right now, and leaders are often welcome to hear how they can do things differently. So, thank you very much for tuning in again today, and I look forward to connecting with you next week, where we will be having a guest speaker who'll be talking about a interesting topic on insurance, and how what the importance is of insurance in a business. And I look forward to having that guest speaker with you next Friday. So, on that note, have an amazing Friday. Stay warm, and I'll connect with you next week. Take care and goodbye.